3,000 light-years from Earth. A Voss elder tells the same story every year. She tells it to frightened children on the eve of the reaping star. There was a day, she says, when the humans stopped smiling. The children go quiet, they always go quiet. Because every species in the Kaross Expanse knows what came after. The Kaross Expanse is old, older than human civilization by 100,000 years. 12 empires rule its stars, 12 fleets patrol its void. At the center of it all sits the Drevakai Dominion, 800 worlds strong. 11,000 warships, 400 billion citizens, 0 recorded defeats. The Dominion has never lost a war, not one, not ever. Their generals are bred for conquest. Their ships are grown, not built. Their history spans 40,000 years of unbroken victory. And 40 years ago, they found Earth. Earth was small. Earth was quiet. Earth had 1 sun and 1 moon and 8 billion people who still argued about borders that no longer mattered. The Dominion scouts logged it as designation, Sol 3, threat level negligible. They watched humanity build rockets that barely reached orbit. They watched humanity fight wars over oil and land and old grudges. They filed a report. The report said one word: harmless. That word would end up carved into monuments across a dozen dead battlefields. Not as a compliment, as a warning. Because the Dominion made one mistake that no empire before them had ever survived making. They let humanity see them coming. 40 years is nothing to an empire that has existed for 40,000. So when Grand Marshal Threxus Vale of the Drevakai Dominion finally ordered the invasion of Sol 3, he did not send his best fleet. He sent his 4th best. 600 warships, 2 million soldiers, enough firepower to sterilize a continent in an afternoon. They are primates with rockets, Vale told his war council. We will not need more than this. His officers laughed. Vale did not laugh, but he did not disagree either. The Dominion fleet dropped out of transit at the edge of the solar system. Their sensors swept forward. Their scouts filed reports. No cloaking technology detected. No advanced weapons detected. No coordinated defense fleet detected. Commander Ithis Kor, who led the vanguard, read the report twice. 40 years of intelligence, she said, and this is all they built. Her second-in-command shrugged. Primates build what primates can build. They had seen humanity's satellites. They had seen humanity's aircraft carriers. They had seen humanity's nuclear stockpiles and calculated correctly that against Dominion shielding, those weapons were fireworks. What they had not seen was the thing that mattered. Because humanity had learned, in the 4 decades since first contact, the one lesson that changes a species forever. We are not alone, and not everyone out there is kind. The Dominion vanguard advanced past Neptune, past Saturn, past the asteroid belt. No resistance. Past Mars. Still no resistance. Ithis Kor allowed herself something close to satisfaction. Total surrender in 6 hours, she told Vale over the long-range channel. Casualties, 0. Vale nodded once. Proceed to Earth orbit. Begin the demonstration strike. The demonstration strike was meant to be simple. Level 1 city. Broadcast the wreckage to every human government at once. Force surrender before the war even started. Commander Kor selected her target, a coastal city of 9 million people. She gave the order. 60 warships broke formation and descended toward the atmosphere. They never reached it. At 400 kilometers above the surface, every Dominion targeting system went dark at once. Not jammed, not hacked. Erased. Kor's bridge crew stared at blank screens, where enemy tracking had been running seconds before. Report, Kor said. Her voice did not shake, her hands did. We have no targeting data, her weapons officer said. We have no navigation data. We have. The ship shuddered. Something had touched her hull. Not a missile, not a beam. Something had physically touched the outer plating of a Dominion warship, and every sensor built to detect such contact reported nothing at all. Then the hull began to open. Not explode, not breach. Open, peeled back in perfect geometric segments, like a machine designed the process rather than a weapon meant to destroy it. Core had never seen anything like it in 40 years of service. 30 seconds later, that ship went dark. No distress signal, no wreckage, no debris field. It simply stopped existing on Dominion sensors, as if it had never been there. 4 more ships followed in the next 90 seconds. The remaining 55 broke formation and fled back toward the main fleet, engines burning past every safety threshold their species had ever designed for. Vale watched the retreat from his flagship. His hands, for the first time in decades, were still. "Explain this," he said, to his intelligence officer. The officer had no explanation. His screens showed the same nothing that Core's had shown. "Sir," he finally said, "we cannot even confirm what attacked us." Vale stared at the empty space where 5 warships used to be. "Then confirm it," he said. "Send everything we have." What the Dominion did not know, what no empire in the Kaross Expanse knew, was that humanity had not spent 40 years building rockets. Humanity had spent 40 years building a lie. The rockets were real, the satellites were real, the aircraft carriers were real. They were also decoys. In the first year after contact, human governments met in a room that has never been photographed, in a location that has never been disclosed, and reached a single unanimous decision. We show them nothing. Every visible human technology from that day forward was calibrated to appear exactly 1 generation behind what the Dominion expected from a species with rockets. Meanwhile, 300 meters beneath the Nevada desert, a different kind of war began. Project codename Quiet Sky. 40 years, 200,000 engineers, $11 trillion spent not on visible weapons but on principles no alien empire had ever needed to develop. Because no alien empire had ever fought an enemy who could see them first and hide from them completely. Human physicists achieved full electromagnetic invisibility in year 6. They achieved matter phase shielding in year 17. They achieved autonomous molecular disassembly weapons, the kind that had just opened Commander Core's hull like a flower, in year 31. None of it was ever tested in public. None of it was ever leaked. None of it was ever mentioned in a single human broadcast, film, or headline. Every human on Earth who worked on Quiet Sky signed away their name for the rest of their life. Some of them died without ever telling their own families what they had built. They built it anyway, because they had seen the Dominion scout ships in the sky 40 years earlier, and they understood something that most of humanity would only learn on this day. The universe does not wait for the unprepared. Ithis Core's dying ships had not been destroyed by weapons the Dominion recognized. They had been destroyed by weapons the Dominion did not know existed, deployed by a species the Dominion had rated as harmless. The molecular disassembly drones did not announce themselves. They did not glow. They did not fire beams that could be tracked or shielded against. They simply arrived, touched a hull, and unmade it, atom by atom, faster than any Dominion sensor array could register the process. 40 years of silence had built the single most devastating surprise in the recorded history of the Kaross Expanse. Vale's remaining fleet regrouped at the edge of the asteroid belt, 595 warships, bruised, confused, still on paper an overwhelming force. He ordered a full assault. "We do not retreat from primates," he told his war council. "We annihilate the source and we leave." His council agreed, None of them said what they were thinking. None of them said what if the primates were never primates at all. The full Dominion assault began at 400 hours Earth Standard Time. 595 warships surged toward the inner solar system in a formation designed to overwhelm any conceivable defense. For 11 minutes, nothing happened. Then Earth answered. They did not see the human fleet until it was already among them. Full-spectrum stealth, 40 years in development, dropped away all at once, 12,000 human vessels decloaking in a single coordinated instant, positioned inside the Dominion formation itself. Not in front of it, not behind it, inside it. Vale's bridge crew screamed warnings that arrived seconds too late to matter. Impossible, Vale said. It was the only word that came to him. His sensors had shown 12,000 ships appear from nothing, in perfect formation, already locked onto every Dominion vessel in range. 12,000 ships that had been sitting silently in the dark for years, waiting for exactly this day. Waiting for the Dominion to arrive and confirm what humanity had always suspected, that somewhere out there, an empire would eventually come looking for a fight. The battle that followed lasted 6 minutes. Historians in a dozen empires would later call it the shortest fleet engagement in recorded galactic history. Human weapons, engineered across 4 decades in absolute secrecy, tore through Dominion shielding as if it were paper. Not because human weapons were larger, because they were designed specifically to counter Dominion shielding, built from decades of quiet observation the Dominion never noticed was happening. 200 Dominion ships were disassembled in the opening 90 seconds. 300 more lost all power in the following 2 minutes, their systems corrupted by something human engineering. RS called a cascade key, a weapon built for exactly one purpose, to speak the Dominion's own machine language back to it as a virus. By minute 4, Vale's flagship was the only Dominion vessel still capable of independent flight. By minute 6, it was alone. Vale stood on his bridge, surrounded by dead consoles and silent crew, and watched a single human ship approach. It did not fire. It did not need to. A voice came through Vale's comm system, human, calm, almost gentle. Grand Marshal Threxus Vale, the voice said, you are the last active vessel in your fleet. Vale said nothing. There was nothing to say. We are not going to destroy you, the voice continued. We need you to go home and explain what you saw. Vale finally spoke. His voice, for the first time in his career, did not sound like the voice of a man who had never lost a war. 40 years, he said. You showed us rockets for 40 years. We showed you what you expected to see, the human voice answered. You never asked what else might be true. Silence stretched across the channel. How many ships, Vale asked, do you actually have? The human voice paused, not from hesitation, from something closer to restraint. You saw 12,000 today, it said. That was the fleet assigned to this system alone. Vale closed his eyes. He thought of the 40 years of scouting reports that had crossed his desk, reports calling humanity primitive, reports calling humanity harmless, reports his own analysts had written, filed, and forgotten. He thought of every empire in the Kaross Expanse that had heard those same reports and believed them, because the Dominion's word had never once been wrong. Until today. You let us find you, Vale said slowly. Understanding arrived like a blade between the ribs. You wanted us to come. We wanted the first empire to attack us to be an example, the voice replied. Word travels faster than fleets do. Vale looked at the wreckage of 600 ships drifting silent in the dark, and understood, finally and completely, what species he had been sent to conquer. Every empire that comes after you, the voice continued, will hear what happened here before they ever reach our system. That is the plan. That was always the plan. Vale's hands, steady through 4 decades of war, began to shake. Not from fear of what had already happened, from understanding what was still to come. Grand Marshal Threxus Vale returned to Dominion space alone, in a ship built for 600, carrying a report no analyst wanted to write. The Dominion War Council listened to his account in total silence. When he finished, no one spoke for 11 minutes. It was the longest silence in the history of that chamber. The report was classified within the hour. Copies were destroyed. Vale himself was quietly removed from active command and reassigned to a research post at the edge of Dominion territory, far from any star system with a view of Earth. But reports like that never truly stay buried. Within a decade, every empire in the Kaross Expanse had heard some version of the story, passed between traders, spies, and frightened diplomats who had seen the wreckage field for themselves. The story changed with every telling. The number of ships grew, the weapons became stranger, the humans became something closer to myth than memory. But one detail never changed, no matter who told it, no matter which language carried it across the void. Every version of the story ends the same way. They smiled at first, the story says. They smiled when we found them. They smiled when we threatened them. They smiled right up until the day they decided we were no longer worth smiling for. And on that day they stopped. Nobody who was there ever saw them smile again. The Voss elder finishes her story. The children sit in silence, the way children have sat in silence for generations, in 100 different systems, under 100 different suns. She looks at them, and for a moment her voice softens. "We do not tell you this story to frighten you," she says. "We tell you this story so that you remember one thing above all others. There is a species out there," she says, "that spent 40 years letting the galaxy believe it was harmless. They are not harmless. They were never harmless. They were simply waiting to see who would come looking for a fight. Somewhere past the edge of the Kaross Expanse, in a system with one sun and one moon, humanity is not waiting anymore. They are watching. And across 1,000 worlds that have never sent a single ship toward Sol 3, parents still lower their voices when they tell their children the same warning, passed down since the day the last message left Vale's dying fleet.